Welcome to XYPN Radio, where your host Alan Moore brings you into a community of fee-only financial planners who want to profitably and successfully serve Gen X and Gen Y clients. If you're ready to get the knowledge you need from leaders in your field, learn from forward-thinking advisors, and take action on your own goals, XYPN Radio is the show for you. Here's your host.
Hello, and welcome to this episode of XYPN Radio. I am your host, Alan Moore, and today I'm excited to have Dan Andrews, the founder of Well-Rounded Success, on the show. Dan was working as an investment manager with a broker-dealer for several years before embarking on a bit of a quest to find what else was out there in the world of financial planning. He came to the FPA Conference and actually met me there, which was his introduction to fee-only planning. He quickly realized this was the direction that he wanted to go with his future business. Dan has a really cool planning process that heavily incorporates coaching techniques to help clients live a well-rounded life, which is where the name of his firm came from. You'll actually hear some of this in the episode because he challenged me personally on being able to appreciate success, which is honestly not a strong suit of mine. In Dan's words, though, he spent the first year banging his head against a wall, but now feels like he's on the path to success. He's actually had a lot of success with his blog, YouTube videos, and in-person meetups that he organizes. He says a really cool story and is about a year into his business, which I think will connect with a lot of folks that are looking to start their own firm. Ready2 Technologies is a market-leading billing and revenue management solution provider founded in 2002. Ready2 offers 3 billing solutions, with each catering to a specific segment of the financial services industry. In production since 1998, Ready2 Revenue Manager, the company's flagship product, is the investment management industry's first software-as-a-service enterprise billing solution. In 2009, Ready2 launched its second enterprise billing offering, Wealth Manager Enterprise, or WME. WME is purpose-built for the U.S.-based correspondent broker-dealer and temp segments, as well as the technology behind Pershing's NetX 360 platform. In 2014, Ready2 introduced BillFin, which is the first cloud-based billing solution for independent financial advisors and RIAs. BillFin is currently the platform of choice for over 200 advisory firms and their custodial firms. Seamlessly integrated with TD Ameritrade, Schwab, RBC, and other industry platforms, BillFin has been getting a lot of attention from the industry. All in all, Ready2's solution process fees for more than 400 financial firms around the globe. For more information, visit www.ready2.com. That's REDI2.com. You can find any of the additional resources that we mentioned during the episode at xyplanningnetwork.com/97. Also, be sure to go to xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP to join our private group just for XYPN Radio listeners. It's the community of advisors we've all been looking for during our career that is there to provide support when we need it the most. Best of all, it's free. I encourage you to check it out. Again, that's xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP. Without further ado, here is my interview with Dan. Hey, Dan, welcome to the show, man. Thanks so much for being on.
Oh, of course. Happy to be here. I appreciate yours and XYPN's hard work, and so I'm happy to participate.
Yeah, Dan's a great example for all the listeners out there that Dan reached out and pitched himself to be on the show, which it took me about one sentence into the email to realize he'd be a great fit. So for folks that are out there, you're welcome to follow Dan's lead and shoot me an email if you think you'd be a good fit for the show. But, you know, you've got such a cool story that I'm thrilled to be able to dig into sort of the various pieces of your career path. So as usual, we'll start at the beginning. What was your sort of initial career path, I guess? What did you think you wanted to be when you grew up?
Oh, the dream job. That is such an interesting concept because now I'm not doing my dream job, but my job is becoming my dream job, which is cool. So I grew up as one of those kids that you always kind of see that wants to be a specific type of person, like an astronaut or a firefighter. And then everybody got excited because they saw me accomplishing that goal, only for me to realize that I no longer wanted to be that goal. And my goal was being part of the Disney company. I grew up in San Diego, where I really kind of appreciated Walt's version of Disney, of bringing families together so they could create memories together versus just for entertainment for the kids or the adults, and all the Mickey Mouse cartoons and such. And so I kind of grew myself to become a member of the hospitality division of Disney, where I did a college internship on my own dime and went to Orlando to kind of get introduced to the Disney company, put my foot in the door, all that nonsense. And so I had a great time, but then I realized I didn't want to work for Disney anymore. Still really enjoy the brand, but not the company for me, just so large. So I was already so committed to the hospitality industry because that's what I was going to school for at my college, So instead of totally scrapping all that hard work that I was doing, I decided to transition to hotels. And then I graduated the year of 2008. And as we all know, people weren't really traveling too much during 2008. So I spent a few months unemployed, going door to door to hotels, just like saying, hey, this is me. I graduated with a hospitality major. Do you guys have any positions open? They're like, oh, you seem great, but we're just not hiring. Obviously, I was pretty defeated there, but I spent a lot of my time volunteering at the San Diego Zoo. That's where I grew up. It's funny, like the day that my project ended at the San Diego Zoo, I got a call from my employer saying, hey, you seem great when we interview you, but we just didn't have jobs when you chatted with us, but we do have a job right now. It's called a night auditor position in Aspen, Colorado. Are you interested? And I'm like, is it a job? Of course I'm interested. So then I spent 2 years doing 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. shifts in Aspen, Colorado. So make sure you treat those people kindly whenever you're at a hotel and have to interact with the overnight staff. And then I realized that it was not psychologically healthy for me to kind of be a night walker, I would say. So I transitioned to a different arm of that hotel to manage an athletic club. And then I was working 70-hour work weeks for 30-hour pay. And it just kind of really was defeating my spirit. I was folding towels on Christmas morning, like, and thinking to myself, something's wrong here. And so it didn't last too long after that epiphany for me to finally kind of step aside. And then I didn't know what to do. So what else do you do? Then go to business school. Luckily, that wasn't my path because I was just lost and trying to figure myself out. Where my family's financial advisor called me saying, hey, are you interested in our industry? We'd like to bring you on. I'm like, I don't know anything. I just know that the market goes up, the market goes down. I have no clue what the heck is going on other than pluses and minuses in my bank account. And so he was like, well, you have the hospitality skills, which means you like taking care of people, which, we can groom you in the financial area. But if you already have that in like kind of your heart, then it will be an easy transition. So I did that for a few years, and it was a kind of a good learning experience. I studied to become a CFP when I was there, but I was kind of being groomed as an asset allocation mutual fund picker, and then also catering to high net worth and retirees. So it wasn't really pulling at my heartstrings in a way because I really liked.
Yeah, it seems like such a bad fit. I mean, like usually you bring someone in with a hospitality background to talk to people and to like be on the front lines. It's an odd mix to have you with that personality and that skill set to then come in and say, okay, you're just going to live in the back office and do asset allocations and not really, be the front man. Like I would have thought they would have trained you to do business development. That's interesting.
My boss, and he was a great boss. I really enjoyed working with him. He wanted me to build my own book, and because he built his own book. And so I went out there banging my head against the wall, trying to convince people with $200,000 and up to trust me with their money. And that's not going to happen to a 27, 28-year-old right out the gate. So I was finding people that were around our age that wanted me to manage their old Roth IRAs that were floating out there. But the cheapest trade I had at that place was $50. So I would have to like make them save for 10 months, $50 a month to at least justify the transaction costs, which didn't make sense.
So what was your actual role then? So you said you're doing some business developments, trying to build your own book, like asset allocation. Like, are you doing a little bit of everything, or sort of what was the actual role there? And it may have changed over time.
I was doing absolutely everything. I was learning how to build asset allocation, and I would ask my boss for kind of advice and insights. And I would go out trying to network and build a book. I was hosting workshops. I was not doing the compliance or administration just because we had somebody that was in charge of that kind of nitty gritty paperwork. And then I was just like, okay, I want to actually do that paperwork so it at least fills my time. So I was just kind of twiddling my thumbs, which isn't me at all. So I'd go out there and do a bunch of other projects as a creative outlet. And then also just to kind of be true to myself versus just banging my head against the wall.
So it's so interesting that this model. So were you sort of in a commission only world, or were they paying you a base salary for some of the work and then you sort of had upside?
I had a base salary for the first few months, and then I transitioned to a commission role. And my boss helped me because he gave me, his ABC style clients. He gave me a C client. So at least I had some clients to work with, as well as the clients that I was bringing on. And I was actually making a pretty good salary. Did have a nucleus that did trust me to manage their money. So I was making a good wrap fee on them, not trading commissions. It was just a wrap fee account. So that was a good way to kind of actually make sure I was keeping the lights on and not having to be desperate out there. Just like, as we all see those people, I'm desperate for a client. Here's my business card. Here's my business card. Here's my business card. That wasn't me, luckily.
Yeah. So I've never heard of, I guess, losing the salary after 2 months or 3 months. Like usually this is a 1 or 2 or 3 year thing. So it was a pretty aggressive, sort of ramp down on salary and ramp up on the commission side. Was it just based on you were producing enough to make that switch over, or that was just sort of the plan all along was, basically as soon as you pass the 7, you're out of salary range and onto straight commissions?
I think I had a unique situation just because my boss was an independent channel of the broker dealer, and he understood that the nucleus that I had was a good enough account to kind of transition from the salary to a producer role.
So for the students out there, I guess, this is the more likely position that they are interviewing for, just because there are a lot more jobs in a production role with a broker dealer than salaried jobs at fee only RIAs. So any advice to those young planners that are sort of, or career changers that are in that position where you were sort of looking to get into the industry? I mean, did you learn a lot and it was absolutely worth the experience?
Alan, you're giving me the question that you ask at the end now. So what am I going to answer now? That is unfair. So I really encourage those people that you described to at least broaden their horizons and do as many coffee meetings as you can to just learn all the different styles out there of financial planners, of investment managers, of wealth managers, all the different kind of roles in this industry to kind of find out what you align with, so that you can actually be true to yourself of what you want to do versus just kind of saying, that sounds okay. Yeah, of course I'll do it.
Yeah, it's the hard thing in financial services. And I saw this when I did my internship at Smith Barney back in the day, I guess that was like 2008, I guess, when I was at Smith Barney for the summer. And it was such a good experience to see that world and to see what it looked like to sell deferred variable annuities, because in CFP school you're so sheltered from the real world that's going on, so you're just learning the science of it. And so my recommendation has always been, do as many internships as you can while you're in college. Don't lock into like a 2-year internship with one firm. Go do 3 internships a year, 4 over 2 years, whatever it is. And if you're career changing the job opportunities will be with broker dealers because they have a very high churn rate. I mean, they're willing to bring on 10 people and only have 1 succeed. So it's a great way to get your foot in the door to sort of see financial planning and have someone give you a salary and learn. It can also drive people out of the industry because they don't realize what you and I get to do, now that you're in the RIA world and doing your own thing. Like, they don't realize the world that we live in and what we get to do for a living. And so it's always hard for me to make that recommendation of like, yeah, go take the, Edward Jones job and go knock on doors and learn how to sell, because it's a great sales training program, but like, just know that that's not really financial planning. I don't know. I always struggle with making that recommendation.
With the recommendation that I made of doing all the coffee meetings?
No. Coffee meetings are great. It's the taking a job just to get your foot in the door. Because like you and I are saying the same thing with, go find what you want before you just take the first thing that comes along, because that first thing that comes along is likely not real financial planning. It's sales. It's not a bad thing, but it's not. It may not be indicative of the reason people actually are attracted to the work that we do in the profession that we're in.
Mm-hmm. And it's funny, the sales training program that I went through at that broker dealer, since we are an independent channel, I got to participate in that. Probably within a year or two, like over 90% of the people I went through the sales training program have either left on their own accord or they found something else. And so it was just disheartening to see that it's kind of like a pyramid scheme in a way, where like all the people that come in, they have their most trusted family members or friends bring over their assets to try to support the person. And then they just still can't sustain their livelihoods while working there with that little asset. So they leave. And then the broker dealer is like, all right, well, thank you for the assets. Take care.
Yeah, and you'll know that because when you get there, they'll be like, here's a book of business, but they don't tell you it's from the guy that couldn't hack it. And so it's all his family and friends that he brought in. But so it gives you a little bit of a starting point, but it's tough. And again, you're turning over those relationships. So I know there are a lot of folks out there doing really great work, and there are broker dealers with really strong programs that are ethical and all of those things. Unfortunately, again, the folks that are aggressively recruiting college students and career changers that have a background in something other than finance. And I think this is the experience for a lot of people that try to come into the industry that don't have a background in finance, is they end up in one of these types of positions because, again, it's sort of built for those folks. It's built for folks that can come in, they can churn through them. If, again, 1 out of 10 make it, then they're fine because that's the program and they got the assets out of it. So it doesn't make it bad. It's more of just be aware, because this is the stuff they don't tell you in the interview process. What they tell you is, oh, you can make $500,000 a year. And they're absolutely right. You can. But sometimes you have to look at what you're giving up to get there. But it sounds like they actually supported you getting the CFP then. Did they pay for it? And I mean, they were supportive, or did you do that on your own?
They were supportive in a lot of things, but in regards to my own career path, I had to front my own CFP costs and do that. Luckily, I could do that at work. So my boss was very encouraging there. But I had to pay for that all myself. So I really had to kind of hone in to see if that's the type of professional I want to be. A CFP, which is more like me, versus like a CFA. So I definitely did a lot of research on all those different kind of Michael Kitces alphabet soup type of designations to see which one I aligned with. And CFP was the one that I chose to pursue.
Yeah, it's easy to get caught in I just need to go get more designations. Kitces, if you haven't read it before, Michael has a great article on this, sort of what designation should I get next. We always start with, okay, get the CFP and then worry about the next designation, because you may find that CFA is great. I mean, it's a very strong designation, comes with a ton of great education and a lot of legitimacy, but you better be really into that if you want to go through it. And it better lead to something that's going to further your career. And doing comprehensive financial planning probably isn't CFA worthy. If you're doing, company analysis and stock picking and that sort of thing, CFA is a must. So can definitely do your research, which it sounds like you're dig in and really get dirty into the details, which is awesome because it's probably has saved you from going down the wrong path too many times.
That is not the case, Alan. I am not a nitty gritty detail guy. Thank goodness you guys have all those compliance checklists and such. But that is something that I'm trying to find, is a partner that is more of that technician side of the person that nerds out about backdoor Roth conversions and such like that. I'm more of a behavioral finance guy that helps people kind of make good decisions. And my goal is to make the financial planning process fun, because I know people see us as the dentist, and what kind of person wants to talk to their dentist every single month. So I'm really trying to make a different type of personality in this industry so that clients actually are engaged and actually are having fun while going through all of this, navigating the complicated world of personal finances.
If you're that technician guy and looking for someone who's more the front man behavioral finance planner, contact Dan Andrews after you've listened to this show. So my old boss, Rick Kaler, out in South Dakota, that's actually, he's sort of on trying this as well, where he's saying great financial planners or great technicians are not necessarily great behavioral change facilitators, I guess, for a cliche term, but or kitschy term, I guess. It's like the person that's talking with the clients, it's almost like a therapist. We're almost, you don't want to be a dentist. It's more like having a conversation with a therapist that you actually like. But he's actually trying to find financial or counselors to be front people for the client relationship. And then financial planners will sort of be second chair, and investment gurus will be sort of third chair in the background. I don't know if that will be a successful model. He will probably be able to make it successful just because he's that kind of guy. But it is interesting that what you mentioned, that really what's fun for clients is to talk to someone who can, I guess, collaborate with them and has that sort of behavioral element as opposed to just the numbers, which they're both very important, but that may make it a little more fun for your clients.
Correct. My role is more of a cheerleader role, which I know that's just a personality that I am. So I kind of embrace that. And I mean, I always say my job is to provide guidance and encouragement so that you actually do the things that you want to do.
I love that, because the best written financial plan, if it's not implemented, is useless. And it just doesn't matter how good of financial planners we are if we can't help our clients actually implement the recommendations and follow through and stay on track, then we might as well not be working with them because they're just paying us and not getting any benefit. So you were in that job with a broker dealer, sort of putting in the hours, putting in the time. And so I guess, did you have sort of another epiphany moment, or just, I guess, what happened to make you realize that wasn't going to be a sustainable long-term plan?
I had a quarter life crisis, Alan. That's what that's called. So I was, putting in all this hard work and not getting much traction because I was just fresh out the gate and I was putting all this pressure on myself. My boss wasn't putting the pressure on me at all. And then I just had that one day where I woke up and I felt like something was wrong, and eventually had that kind of that freak out of, oh my goodness, I'm a failure. Every decision I've made in my entire life has been the wrong decision. I've never added any value to anyone. And it was a bad state of mind. And it took me a few weeks to get out of that funk, honestly. But then a good friend of mine he encouraged me to at least start creating content just so I had something I could control and a creative outlet, because the compliance channel of the broker dealer that I was using. And again, I was an independent arm of the broker dealer, so I wasn't a W-2. So luckily I didn't have to drink all the Kool-Aid from them. But I started creating my own content. I created my own blog that was more personal finance based because I was studying for the CFP. And I asked my compliance department, is this okay for me to go through my own channels? And they're like, oh, if you're not talking about financial markets or investments, then go right ahead. And I was like, oh my goodness, I can talk about a lot of things, like all the stuff I'm learning in the CFP.
Which is funny because they probably were like, oh, there's nothing else for you to talk about besides financial markets, of course. So we'll just tell you can't do that, and there will be nothing left to write about.
We'll get to that. So my first article was about budgeting. My second article was about basic insurance, and it was kind of geared towards young professionals and millennials. And so then my third article, I decided to go a different theme of learn from success, 5 interviews with people who I admire. And these were kind of my family, friends, and people in my network who accomplished great things. And I wanted to kind of document their journeys as well as kind of share their advice of what they would give to people like me. And so I was really excited about this article. I included my boss in that article because I wanted to share his insights. In order to get his name and his title on the article, I had to get it approved by compliance. So I take it to compliance, and the first words I heard were, "We need to escalate this." So they decided that they wanted to shut down my blog. They changed their mind. And so that was totally a frustrating situation. But I really have a lot of admiration for my boss because he went to bat for me. He told the compliance department, Dan's just trying to build an audience. He's trying to have a creative outlet. How can we make this work? So we all came to the conclusion that I could keep the blog going, but I could never mention any aspect of finances. So that's when I transitioned it and kind of pivoted the theme to being personal and professional development theme, similar to that Learn from Success article I just mentioned. And that's when I really took off in my own confidence and my own kind of ability to have a creative outlet, have kind of something that was mine, and have something that I could actually not feel like I was banging my head against the wall, and actually have something that I don't have to get it redlined by compliance every single time. I had kind of freedom. And it took a while, but a few years go by that creative project eventually became my full-time business, where I brought financial planning into it.
So interesting that you say that, because I can imagine with your background that you're obviously a creative person and you have that creative energy, and that when you are, when you're working in a job and you're doing the day-to-day grind, it can be really stifling. So it's kind of cool to hear you talk about that. This was a creative outlet for you to sort of get some of that creative energy out and express some of that, which probably made you feel a little more human. because you got to be yourself a little bit more. But it's a tough road with compliance. It's not to say it can't be done. A lot of times, the broker dealers will eventually bend and you can sort of force us in. But it's unfortunate that it is so like teeth. It really is like pulling teeth, back to the dentist metaphor, because, they have to review everything. And I get it. They're responsible for what you say. And if you say something stupid and promise the world to, guarantee stock returns, they're going to be in trouble for it as well as you. But it's awesome that they did allow you to do it, and you're finally sort of able to find that middle ground. So you said that blog sort of grew into, you grew an audience. So how did you go about, like, you're writing the content, how did you actually go about sharing that content and building an audience over time?
Try to have as much fun as possible, because if you're having fun, then people want to see what you're up to. And I used it as a way to kind of have that creative outlet and like kind of showcase messages that would fall under that guidance and encouragement theme that I already talked about, and just share messages, share like kind of my story, be vulnerable, be authentic, and then also be inclusive, because I would host events. People would show up that were like kind of my friends or social network, and then eventually that would just grow over time. So I just like kept it as organic as possible versus just having like kind of clickbait material, because I don't really trust internet strangers. That's just my kind of 2 cents. And so I've been like focusing on growing everything organically, because that's what people have done for years, building their own books of business, etc. Like, why not? I don't have to reinvent the wheel, and just kind of understand that it's just going to grow over time. So I would just like, share it via Facebook. And then a good strategy I did was always interviewing people. So like people would be excited to share that message if they were quoted in it, for example. Did I answer your question?
For sure, which is that, one is that there's no magic sauce. There's no secret to success other than it's consistency of writing. But it's also cool to hear you say, cool to hear the idea of like interviewing other people, because that's a great way for them to sort of get a vested interest. It's one thing for them to, maybe share a post here and there, but it's another thing for them to say, hey, I was quoted here. And it sort of gives that air of authenticity, for you to be able to share, or for them to be able to share your content, which is cool.
And a big thing too is like something I always tell people is get out of your head. I want to interview people so that I find out what their stories are and their insights are that expose me to new ideas. And so it doesn't just come across as like, here's Dan's opinion on this, you should listen to Dan. Like, no, it's like all these other people that have chipped in on this mindset that I want to share, like kind of different strategies or different kind of stories that you can learn from, versus just putting myself on a pedestal.
So did you have any revenue strategies, I guess, early on with a blog? Were you doing affiliate links and that sort of thing? Or was it just pure educational and just an opportunity to sort of share what was going on?
The latter. It was just purely educational. And I would try to get sponsors for events that I would throw. I still throw just to offset costs there. But yeah, I didn't use it as a revenue generator at all, especially in the beginning stages, because I didn't want to come across that I was selling to people when it was just something I wanted them to think was cool and different and something to support.
So did you have a mailing list? Like, were you collecting email addresses and trying to get them on a list, or you were just sort of, it was more of a followers, just the folks would show up whenever you had new content?
Build an audience. It was very primitive in my marketing abilities back then, but it's something I've gotten better with over time. But back then, when it was a creative outlet, was just relying on my social network to share the messages and then recruit people to my events.
Okay, so that was really the call to action, was trying to get them to the events. Is that accurate?
Correct.
Okay, very cool. So I guess, how did this evolve? So, well, first, how long were you doing this while you were still at the broker-dealer? Was this just a couple of months, or was this a couple of years that you're building this audience while you're still working at your job?
The creative outlet started in February 2014, and then I left my job in November of 2015. So I did work on it for a few years, and it was just like kind of a side project in addition to my financial advising role. I wouldn't call it a financial planning role, because I would do that on the side of my financial advisor kind of responsibilities. It was just something that was like kind of still in that personal and professional development angle, but it was starting to become obvious that I could bring financial planning into it because financial planning is like kind of the foundation of living your own great life. So it just made sense once I got exposed to what financial planning really is versus just the CFP textbook was, oh, I can actually bring that into the creative outlet and only focus on one brand. Why not do that versus kind of juggling both of these hats?
So listeners have heard me say this before, and you'll hear me say this again and again and again. Like, I just want to bring awareness to the fact that here you were, I'm assuming somewhere in your, late 20s at that point. You're working in a broker-dealer full-time. So you got a full-time job, studying for the CFP, paying for that on your own, writing a blog, hosting events off of that blog for readers. Like, this was something that you put a ton of time and energy and effort and creative energy and, really put your heart and soul into. And I want listeners to recognize that because, one, you should be commended for that because that's what has led to the path you've gone down and the success that you're having now. But that's what it takes. There's no easy road here. There's no like, oh, I wrote 3 blog posts, so I got 100 clients and now I get to retire happy. Like, that's it. And we only see, it's the iceberg metaphor, that we only see the top 10% that's floating above, or that's above the ice. We don't see or above the water. I'm sorry. We don't see the 90% under the water. And this is the 90%. It's spending several years building an audience, whether you knew that this was eventually the path you were going to take, or building an audience, just knowing it was going to lead to something great for yourself. That, again, this is just what it takes. So, okay, so you're at the firm, you're building the audience. I guess what was sort of the tipping point for you to make the decision that, going solo was your path?
Going solo was my path when I went to the Financial Planning Association conference in Boston in 2015, where I actually shook hands with you and shared a picture with you, if you remember that. And I just had my mind blown of the different styles of financial planners out there and the business models that those financial planners were implementing. And I didn't know that existed, honestly. And I was really trying hard to not have that grass is always greener mentality, because I ran into that trap a few times during my time at that independent channel of the broker dealer. I almost moved to China, for goodness sake. Like, I was just trying to grab onto something that would feel good and feel like I was staying true to myself. And when I got exposed to what people were doing at that financial planning conference, that's when I kind of knew that, oh, I need to make this leap now while I'm in my late 20s, before I have a family, before I have a mortgage, before I have all these other responsibilities. Because if I don't give it a shot, then I'm always going to regret it. So there's never a great time, but then in your gut, you're always going to feel that intuitive kind of pull to actually pull you in the direction that you need to be kind of your happiest self. And that's what it meant going solo for me.
It's crazy because when I take for granted my background, and I was very fortunate that I discovered what I'll say, what I call real financial planning when I was in college and just sort of stayed in this career. I forget that not everybody's that way, that not everybody is super in tune with fee only versus broker dealer versus the different ways that all the RAs out there and financial planners can operate. And I encourage listeners to talk to other planners about what you do. It doesn't make you right and them wrong, but going is sort of your recommendation earlier, go on as many coffee dates as you can and just learn what else is out there, because you never know when a conversation at a random conference honestly can have an effect, completely unbeknownst to me, that conversation would ultimately, help sort of, I guess, be the next stepping stone for you in your career, which is awesome and humbling, to be completely honest.
Mm-hmm. No, I appreciate what you guys are doing. I mean, I would not have had the confidence to do what I do because compliance terrified me. That was a huge kind of overseer when I was at the broker dealer. As you said, they're so large, they really have to prepare themselves for the lowest common denominator of intelligence of somebody that's going to go out there and guarantee things left and right. And they have to kind of create plans and systems to prevent that. With what XY Planning Network offered and having that ability to kind of have that compliance coaching and guidance, I would not have been able to have that confidence to go off on my own.
Again, it's so humbling. It's a struggle sometimes to actually think about that. I'll be completely honest.
Can I ask you a question, Alan?
Oh, sure. turn the tables.
It's humbling for you. So then how are you giving yourself a pat on the back for what you're creating in XY Planning Network?
It's interesting because in the day-to-day grind, we focus on, hey, this member had this question, or we have this new service offering, or something else happens. And like every now and then we pick our heads up, and usually it's during strategic planning that we do once a year. We pick our heads up and we're like, you know what, if like this whole thing fell apart and like this whole thing just went away and a regulator came along and said, the XY Planning Network business is illegal and you can't do it anymore. It's honestly very humbling. It's a powerful thing to be able to look and go, you know what, though? There are 300, as of this recording, I think 391 entrepreneurs out there that, that we were an influence, that we were able to help. It's certainly not us doing it, because ultimately the entrepreneur, you had to go out and do this. We were just the support system. But I like to believe that, we've been a key component in helping people be able to go out and live their great life, you being one of them.
So how are you going to improve yourself so you actually give yourself a pat on the back more often than your strategic plans?
I have no idea how to actually do that without, I don't know, any recommendations?
Yes, I thank you for that layup of asking me the question. So it is something that even when I was doing all that hard work at my previous firm, I wouldn't let myself be happy, just because I would always kind of not feel that feeling of success that kind of culture has groomed us. And yes, I follow a bunch of Entrepreneur Magazine, Forbes, all these different showcases of different personalities of entrepreneurs. But sometimes the image of success that they are is like a good looking young guy in a sharp suit with a fancy cocktail in his hand, sitting on a fancy car in front of a nice house, and women are draped all over him. Like, that's the image of success that sometimes is portrayed. That is not me. And it's funny, when I was telling that story to one of my lady pals, she told me that sometimes the female definition of success is marry that guy. That's where that quarter life crisis that I went through, I needed to figure out my own definition of success versus always striving to feel that feeling of success 30 years from now. Because chances are, if I felt that feeling of success, I would just move the goalposts and just kind of say, okay, now I need to do this. Instead of getting caught up in the day-to-day grind, you need to let yourself be happy on the journey versus waiting for yourself to go, okay, when I get to the strategic planning meeting is when I'm going to let myself self-reflect. You're not alone. I would have to say, I'm doing research for a book right now where I want to share stories of how millennials are creating their own paths as well as giving back along the way. And one of the questions I ask each one of my interviewers is, tell me about your biggest achievement and which personality trait attributed to that achievement. And they all trip up on it. They all have no idea. And I've interviewed a volunteer firefighter who saved somebody's life. I volunteered a friend who's opened her own restaurant in the mountains, and yet they still trip up on it. So that's something I'm really trying to help out with people, is kind of letting them kind of check in with themselves and self-reflect so that you can give yourselves those pat on the backs throughout your journey. If you want a great TED Talk, watch Brene Brown, Daring Greatly, The Power of Vulnerability, as well as Sean Aker. He does The Secret to Happy Work. They constantly talk about kind of how to appreciate the journey and live a wholehearted life and have fun with it versus just always kind of waiting for the time to give back. Creating my own definition of success obviously was a huge thing for me, but it's been discipline over the years of living that definition of success and consistent persistence that has kind of created this mentality that I have now, where I'm more confident, I'm happier, I'm more resilient when things go wrong. And I actually let myself feel gratitude versus just going, okay, I need to get now X number of clients so I can feel successful. That's hogwash in my opinion. And I always get pretty animated when people think that they're not doing good work, because that is not the case.
So what is your definition of success? I mean, is it a line? Is it an income line? Is it a timeline that you're trying to hit? What is the thing that you're trying to achieve that will be success at this point?
Well, my definition of success is also the name of my company, because I feel it's so important, and it's well-rounded success. Well-rounded success means I don't want to just focus on one area of my life. I want to make sure I'm living a true life in multiple areas so I can feel successful today. And just in case I'm hit by that bus tomorrow, then I knew I was living my great life all the way to my last moments. So the 5 areas of my life that I need to consistently contribute to are my bedrock, which is like your personal finances and your health, like the foundation of your life. Go to the dentist, book your dentist appointment. The second area is community, giving back along the way and being a harmonious person on this planet. The third area is career, making sure that you're gaining or you have the skills to add value to others, as well as progressing yourself to have a prosperous career. The fourth category is relationships. If you want someone in your life, own that relationship, reach out to them. Don't wait for them to email or text you. And then the final category is soul, making sure that you feel like you're on the right path, that you're feeling gratitude, that you're feeling happy, that you're feeling like you're being a good member in your church, whatever. Like, make it so that you feel like you're on the right path versus always striving to be like, okay, what's next? What's next? How am I going to feel successful?
It's so powerful to really sit down and define success for yourself, because whatever you come up with, I'd be willing to guarantee that it is nothing like what most people have in their head when they first start. Just like you said, like if you sit down and say like, the vision that we have in our head of success, if we sit down and really ask ourselves, what will be success for me? It won't look like that image. And I will tell you that sometimes the goalposts move because you achieve what you believed would make you happy, and it doesn't. And it's not to say that, I guess maybe goalpost moving is not the fair statement, but it's really trying to evaluate, is this what I really want? And I'll use myself as an example. When I first started my RIA, my goal was I want to work 10 hours a week. Like I want a core base of clients. I had sort of an income line that I wanted to make, and I want to work, 10 to 15 hours a week. And I know financial planners that have built those businesses. And what I realized was that did not fulfill me. Like that was not going to be fulfilling long term. And that's why ultimately, sort of got into XY Planning Network and started to fill my time, because I realized what I love doing and what's fulfilling for me is not just hanging out skiing, literally all day, every day, and not actually working and contributing and to your point, giving back and that sort of thing. So it's okay to self-reflect and take that time. It's not just okay, it's important, especially as you go on this entrepreneurial journey, because you'll find sometimes the goalposts that you're shooting for and trying to achieve that well-rounded success, that's the only thing that will keep you going some days. This journey is tough. And now you're pretty far into that journey. You launched your firm just over a year ago. Is that right?
January 2016 is when the state registered my firm. Yeah.
Okay. So about 15 months in of actually running the RIA. And would you agree that, there are times where it's just the vision of what this is going to become is really what gets you up in the morning?
I was banging my head against the wall for like my entire first year in operations, Alan. But yeah, just getting up every single day and having something to kind of motivate you is a huge benefit. One tool I use that is a huge kind of factor or huge contributor to my productivity is a goals and rewards matrix, kind of tying into the appreciation of progress. It's a way to like kind of ensure that I'm doing all the right things, where I have like kind of 8 categories of goals I want to make sure I do every single month. And if I do all those things, then success is going to happen. I'll get new clients. I'll get more like speaking engagements. I'll be able to like do all these things I want to do as my goals, but it's going to take that consistent persistence to actually do all the right behaviors to give you those opportunities. So this is up in my office, and I have all these 8 categories of goals of like posting a blog post on my article, sending out my monthly newsletter, hosting an event, doing my compliance, blah, blah, blah. Then the most important part of this matrix, instead of just being a checklist, is I actually give myself a pool of rewards I let myself enjoy if I do all my goals. So if I hit 5 out of 8 of my goals for that month, then I have a pool of rewards that I choose something like watching my favorite movie or writing my fiance a letter, something like that, to actually let myself do the things that I want to do, so I don't get just caught up in the day-to-day grind, as well as feeling like I earned that ability, and so I can give myself a pat on the back.
So where did all of this come from? Is this just sort of your natural personality to do this? Or again, was it just sort of learning from the TED Talks and reading books and just sort of being introspective and that sort of thing? Like, I guess for someone who isn't naturally wired this way? Like, how do they learn, or how do they take the first and second and third step towards doing some of these pieces that, you're really focused on?
Oh, that's kind of you to say, but it's a journey. I mean, it's like a muscle. Like, it's something that you get better over time with. And it's something that a lot of researchers have said, like, if you practice something day in, day out, then it's just going to kind of rewire your brain. And by watching a lot of TED Talks, by reading a lot of books, going to conferences, broadening my horizons, and just like being a sponge and in that kind of like continual learning mode has totally shaped who I am today and made me more resilient, made me more confident, made me happier. But again, it's a practice, like just like a yoga practice. Like, it's something that you work on that you'll never be good at. But it, like, the power of self-reflection is one of the most powerful tools out there, because then you focus more on what you can control and the behaviors you need to adopt versus just getting caught up in the external world. Like, one of my most successful monthly newsletters, which I love my monthly newsletters, and that definitely comes across in the open rates and such, was I created a monthly newsletter that came out the day after the election happened in November of 2016. And yes, that was a day where a lot of people were in a lot of panic, or just like kind of chaos was going on. And one of the things I shared in that newsletter is focus more on what you can control. And then also, here's a TED Talk that I recommend you watch that helps you kind of not fall into the traps of just accusing people that they're wrong. And that was by far one of the most successful newsletters I had. And one of the best feelings of validation that I had from that monthly newsletter was a friend who's who's just a brand expert. He told me that my newsletter was the best newsletter he's ever seen. So just having kind of that different approach, as well as kind of consistently coaching people to focus on self-reflection and on what they can control, that ties into financial planning. So it's just like kind of two kind of skills that I have that I've created a business model and a brand that lets me be my best self.
So how does that then flow into your financial planning process? Can you talk me through sort of the process that you have with clients and how all of this integrates or doesn't integrate, I guess, into your planning process?
So I have a few different models. One of them is investment management only. Again, that's what I was groomed. And so that's what I was really comfortable selling, as well as I provide a service. Like, I send people to Betterment, and then I become a financial go-to resource for them. So whenever they have questions about all the areas of financial planning, I give them guides and resources, but I don't really like hold their hand in that process. So I'm kind of a resource to guide and encourage them. But then my financial planning process is something that I'm getting better at, because again, like, I wasn't groomed as a financial planner. So I'm creating my financial planning process like right now, where I had a friend who agreed to be my guinea pig in a way to like kind of create the service model that I wanted. And it was great because it gave me that confidence and that kind of peace of mind that I actually knew a lot to actually coach people in financial planning. Now I actually have people that are paying for it, which is great validation. And one of the ways that I love helping my clients is I kind of help them navigate becoming an adult, honestly, because nobody taught us how to be adults. I have had a few families come to me and actually pay my financial planning fees to kind of do an adult program with their kids that just graduate college or like in their mid to late 20s, where every single month we talk about a certain area of their financial life. So like organizing their paperwork, as well as doing a gratitude project in their first month. The second month, I do like your financial summary, and then a goals and rewards matrix, what I was communicating with you. And then there's other months like doing work benefits and retirement planning alongside, all right, let's make sure your cover letter, your resume, and your LinkedIn profile look good. So it's like getting these kids, honestly, and I'm a kid myself, of helping them like with financial planning, which they appreciate, but I know that they're going to be more excited about the personal growth track that I have in that financial planning process.
So is this something that you're doing with all of your clients, or that's your process for the sort of the younger kids of folks that you know? So remind me, just what's the age range, I guess, that's focused on?
So the personal growth and financial planning is like a bundled deal. And that is more focused on people that are in their mid to late 20s or maybe even early 30s. And then pretty much right after people go through post quarter life crisis, honestly, I would say that kind of mentality, that's when I help people more with their financial planning. And then I sprinkle in personal growth topics alongside that.
Gotcha. So you're, 14, 15 months in, how has it gone? You said the first year you were mired in sort of operational, stuff, which, honestly just comes with starting a business. But how do you feel being just over a year in? Are you happy that you made the decision to go solo and to build this business?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, last year I was banging my head against the wall. I got in the mental darkness a lot last year, but this year, like, I haven't even come close to that, just because I feel like I have momentum. All the consistent persistence that I've been doing these last few months and years, like, it's finally really paying off and getting trust, where I have financial planners coming to me, like, offering me to join their services. And I'm like, no, like, I know what I need to do, and I need to, like, see this out just to make sure I give it my best shot, versus kind of molding myself to being similar to what I was before.
So you had mentioned in the email that you sent me that you were on the positive side when it came to income and expenses. So do you mind sharing sort of what your sort of first year revenue was and how that sort of projects going forward on how things are just from an income and expense side of things?
Yeah. So last year I probably made around, this is why I wish I had a technician, Alan, made around 25 to 28,000, and my expenses were around 18,000. So I was just like kind of a little bit over the net. I wasn't supporting my livelihood by any means, but it was great to make a profit. But this year I anticipate making around 50,000 and keeping my expenses around 15,000.
Okay. So maybe if that continues, then sort of going into year 3 is probably when you get into replacing, your income from prior jobs. So 3 years, which is awesome. I know folks ask us that all the time. How long does it take? And the answer is, of course, it depends. But you had this really cool foundation. I'm not sure that I've heard anybody have this audience that you had as you were getting launched. So can you tell me a little bit more about the events that you were running, and it sounds like you're still doing that. And so what is the purpose of those? And then has that actually led to business, or at least, awareness of your business among your sort of ideal clients?
I would say it's definitely just promoted awareness for my business, as well as introduced me to new people. And last year, one of the biggest mistakes I made was I became a stay-at-home entrepreneur to keep costs low, the same time that my fiance went to physician assistant school in Omaha, Nebraska. I live in Denver, Colorado. So it was a very lonely year. My dog is a good companion, but he's always one-sided conversations. I decided to host a lot of events just so I could get out and socialize. But I think, putting too much pressure on those events. And I don't think I was coming at it with the most genuine of kind of persona, because it was I need to build awareness for my business type thing. So they weren't as fulfilling as I anticipated. So I kind of shifted gears now to what I was doing before I actually became a business, of when people were organically attracted to my company versus just putting so much pressure on myself. I don't know if that made sense, but I hope it did. And then, so right now I host monthly event, and one of the most successful event I do is an annual event. It's a team trivia night. And I've been hosting these events for years, which gave me the foundation. And what I love these events, and we always attach a nonprofit to it. So I know a lot of millennials out there are they don't trust nonprofits because they feel like the nonprofits have too many administrative costs, but that's a whole different argument. I mean, it's needed, but yeah, I won't get into that now. But so I want to provide an avenue for people to at least have an opportunity to give back. And so millennials sometimes would rather pay $25 for a backpack versus giving a $20 check to a nonprofit. So we kind of attach a fundraiser as well as a pet supplies drive, for an example, and then bring everybody together for a trivia night that I create. I love creating trivia. I love kind of creating these quirky questions. And then every fourth question is something financial planning related. So it's like kind of an educational opportunity for the people that do come. And it does come across as like a very fun and organic approach versus just trying to promote my business. And then all the proceeds go towards a nonprofit. So that's been a really fun one. And then I also do field trips. One I'm really excited for is in June, where a friend of mine was just elected to the Colorado House of Representatives. And so instead of people just venting on Facebook about whatever political nonsense is going on, I'm like, okay, why don't we just go get educated about how the system really works? I don't agree with all the policies that my friend does, but he's agreed to do a tour. So I'm excited to kind of plan that. And then book club. I actually have one tonight where we go through a professional development book and then bring people together to actually motivate us to read and then kind of talk about the book. The last book club was doing Daring Greatly by Brene Brown, where it was just a bunch of dudes talking about vulnerability. It was awesome. Usually these book clubs attract both genders, but that one just had a bunch of dudes. So yeah, it's just been a fun way to get my name out as well as do the events that I want to do and include people at the same time.
Usually, folks, I think we do things like the events with the intention in mind of I'm going to get clients out of this. And I do think that sort of relaxing and just saying like, hey, there's another purpose here. And maybe it is just building awareness or meeting people or supporting a local charity or nonprofit or whatever it is that you're really passionate about. Just let that be the focus is what I'm hearing from you. And you'll see the benefits, in other ways. But you don't necessarily just have to measure it in terms of, well, at my event, I got 10 business cards, 3, became prospects and 1 became a client. It can be, about something other than that. Because it sounds to me like, sort of giving back and philanthropy in general sort of runs through your process just sort of overall. Is that a focus for your clients or I guess for the work that you do with clients?
That's a good question. So, philanthropists are just people I want to surround myself with just because that's a kind of who I am. And I know I mesh well with those types of people. For my financial planning process, I try to have a kind of a conversation with my clients just to expose them to different nonprofits, just because all of us know like the big ones that are always like on like United Ways, etc. But we don't know what's going on in our local community. So I try to kind of expose my clients to hub organizations, which introduce you to cool projects going on all throughout your community. I've kind of been in this world for a few years now. So it's something I feel like I'm well versed in, but I still have a lot to learn. But it's something that I wish I knew beforehand of like how to find a nonprofit that really pulls at your heartstrings. And then until that happens, how do you make sure that you're giving back until that or before that kind of one nonprofit that you want to sit on a board of, for example? There are kind of my future goals of my financial planning process where I want to offer 100% socially responsible investing options. And then also there are some short-term savings strategies, like people saving a future down payment of a house that's not going to be, I don't recommend that being in the market, of course, but there are kind of instruments for you to put them in philanthropic kind of bonds, for example, which they use that money to give back to their communities and get a return on investment. It's not going to be that high, but at least it gives a little bit better than a savings account. So I want to be able to offer things like that. Right now, I'm 100% betterment just for the simplicity side. But in the future of well-rounded success, maybe becomes well-rounded financial. Then I kind of want to like offer more socially responsible options for my clients.
Very cool. And SRI or impact investing is definitely a hot topic. It's difficult to do right now just because we don't have as many of the tools and mechanisms as we would like to be able to do the filtering and that sort of thing. And socially responsible means different things to different people. So one person may be, very pro environment, whereas another may be very anti-guns, another may be very pro supporting companies that have female executives or whatnot. Like, everyone sort of has the impact that they want to make. And we're not quite to the ability of filtering out to say, this is the impact I want to have on the world and let your investments actually have that impact. But we're moving in that direction. So Dan, as we're sort of wrapping things up, I know I stole your thunder earlier with my question in the middle of sort of what you had wished you had known about launch or joining the broker dealer and that sort of thing. So any other words of wisdom, I guess, that if there was one thing you could go back and tell yourself that you wish you had known then that you've learned?
Just because I was anticipating that you would ask me something similar, I had a backup plan, Alan. So it's something I wish I kind of embraced earlier when I was just starting out, was the fact that the person becomes the professional, not the other way around. So really focus on yourself and like being true to you. And then a good professional is going to come out of that. Don't just focus on becoming a professional and then just say, okay, once I feel that feeling of success as a professional, then I'm going to spend time with my family. That's hogwash, in my opinion. So just focus that the person makes the professional, not the other way around.
And I think for a new entrepreneur, that when you're just getting started, it is so easy to fall into the trap of working 80 hours a week and stop working out and stop spending time with friends and family, and you're working from home. And so you're not getting the social interaction and you sort of become a hermit. And that is really, really not healthy. Exactly what you're talking about, which is put time to go to the gym on your calendar and go. Put date nights, put time with your kids or your family or your friends, like time to go to church or be involved in different organizations. Like put it on your calendar, because if you don't, it will consume you. Very easy to let the business consume you. So like you said, be a really good person, be healthy, and that will lead to business success.
Exactly. I do have something I want to raise my hand with and make sure I get an opportunity to give my XYPN pals and team members a high five for being pals as well as good resources. But something about my style is I like to end conversations in my newsletters with a corny joke. So may I, Alan, before we officially sign off?
This will be the first in 90 plus episodes that we've had a good joke. So
Yes. All right. So let's see. All right. What is Beethoven's favorite fruit?
No idea.
Banana. Banana.
My 2.5-year-old would love that joke.
Love it.
That's awesome. Well, Dan, thank you so much for taking the time to come on the show and closing us on a high note. But most of all, for being willing to share your story and for reaching out and volunteering to be on. So thank you so much. Don't forget to check out Ready2 Technologies and specifically their BillFin solution for financial advisors and RIAs. Designed to be simple and affordable, BillFin automates your fee calculations, creates great-looking client invoices, and generates your custodian fee file. If your accounts are at TD, Schwab, or RBC, they've got you covered. Using a custodian not yet integrated with BillFin? No problem. BillFin offers an easy upload portal where you can upload your data from an Excel spreadsheet until your particular custodial integration is available. Ready2 offers 1-week free trials of BillFin, so visit www.billfin.com or call 617-315-8101 to get started. And we hear their product support team is top-notch. Oh yeah, and their plans start at just $39 a month with an annual contract. Definitely go check them out. Be sure to join our VIP community at xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP to hang out with other XYPN radio listeners, ask questions for future mailbag episodes with myself and Kitsis, and to finally find a community of like-minded financial advisors. Thanks so much for joining me today. We'll see you next time.
You're not alone, and you're not crazy. It's scary starting, building, and growing your own financial planning firm. And that's why we put together a free private community just for you, the Cutting Edge Financial Planner. Go to xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP or text XYPN Radio to 33344 and join a network of thousands ready to change the lives of Gen X and Gen Y clients.